In today's video, we're going to break down 6 easy steps to help you build a meal plan that's going to get you bigger, stronger, and in the best shape of your life. And at the end of the video, I'm going to break down my exact diet protocol that I'm following to get in the best shape of my life, all without tracking calories. So here are the 6 steps that we're going to be discussing throughout this video. First step is going to be choosing a sustainable approach to your diet. Second step is how we're going to build your plate up to serve your specific goal, whether that's fat loss or muscle gain. Step 3 is choosing the right nutrient-dense foods for you and your specific goal. Step 4 is including fasting and the 2-MAD approach to your eating. Step 5 is keeping hydrated, and step 6 is supplementation. So let's dive into step number 1, where we're going to discuss choosing a sustainable approach to your nutrition. Now, to address this straight off the bat, yes, you can count your calories, and yes, you're going to get in the best shape of your life following a calorically restricted diet, tracking your calories. It will work, and I've used it with many clients to get them in the best shapes of their life in a short amount of time. And throughout that time, I've also taught them sustainable habits. That means once we've gone through the dieting phase and got to the physique that they want, they know how to then essentially stop tracking and keep fueling their progress with their physique. Now, if you want me to do a whole separate video on how to kind of set up your meal plan using calories, I can definitely do that. So drop it in the comments down below and I can address that there. But for today's video, the whole approach here is how to create a meal plan that you do not need to track continuously, because that to me just isn't long-term sustainability. Yes, you might be able to address it from time to time, but for me, I'm looking at the long run here. So what that means is we need to create systems to follow to ensure that we get the progress that we want to achieve. So the sustainable approach that I've kind of used with myself and many of my clients to kind of get them away from calorie tracking and get them still towards the physique that they want is by utilizing intermittent fasting and also a 2-MAD approach to your nutrition. Now I'm going to break down the fasting and the 2-MAD approach to your nutrition in step number 4, but just as an overview here, by adding a form of restriction, whether that's through missing a meal or just through reducing the amount of time that you can actually eat, is going to help us create that lean muscular physique that we're after. So step number 2 is understand how to build a plate around your specific goal, whether that be fat loss or muscle gain. So let's start off with the fat loss plate. We want to make sure this plate has high protein, high fat, some vegetables that you might be able to tolerate, some low glycemic fruits, so things like berries, kiwis, apples, stuff like that, and that's it. So that does mean no starchy carbs, but we'll save those for our muscle building phase. Now let's talk about our muscle building plate. It's going to be exactly the same as a fat loss plate. However, in that last meal of the day, we're going to want to include some complex carbohydrates through starchy carbs, things like white rice, potatoes, sweet potato, maybe some sourdough bread if you're feeling a bit fancy. But we want to save those carbohydrates for that last meal of the day, because not only is this going to help us with sleep that night by helping lower our cortisol levels, but also it just means we're going to feel a lot more satiated throughout the day, having the higher protein and higher fat meals in the day. And then in the evening, it's then going to help us kind of get into a nice rested state, ready for bed. Now let's dive into step 3, where we're now going to address the plate from step number 2 and start to think about what foods are we going to use to kind of help us meet our goals. Now at the Strength Formula, we like to focus on nutrient dense single ingredient foods as much as possible. Now that will mean your specific nutrition formula may be different to mine, but we want to be following a system, because this system is the thing that's going to get us to the result that we want to achieve. Now here are the foods that we want to focus on and make sure we're hitting all of our macros and micros to give us the best possible chance of feeling great as well as looking great. Now let's start with protein. So when we discussed the plate, we said we want to focus on getting a big portion of that plate being protein. So we're going to want to include things like eggs, mince, steak, lamb, chicken thighs, chicken breasts, wild caught salmon, Greek yogurt, real protein-packed, nutrient-dense foods to help support our goals of building muscle and looking jacked in the process. Now with the fats, to help us feel full and to help with our hormones, we want to make sure we're including things like avocados, Brazil nuts. We want to be cooking in animal fats, things like tallow or butter. You can also get some coconut in there. And if you have access to a high quality olive oil, getting some olive oil on your foods as well is a nice way to bump up your fats. Now, when it comes to the carbohydrates, this is where they are going to help fuel our body for our specific goals that we're after. So when it comes to a fat loss phase, I want you to focus on things like fruits. So we want to choose low glycemic fruits like berries, apples, kiwis, melon, mango. Now, if you're currently in a fat loss phase, a fruit that I love to add into my last meal of the day is a butternut squash. Adding this in is essentially like adding in potatoes. So if you're still keeping on that low glycemic foods, but we're also making sure we're not hitting those starchy carbs just yet. We'll save those for our muscle building phase. Now, our muscle building foods will be exactly the same as our fat loss foods. However, this is in now in our last meal where we're going to add in the rice, the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, the starchy carbs that are packed full of nutrients and going to help support our body with fuel and function when we're in that muscle building phase. Now, with veggies, you can throw them in as you see fit. Personally, I don't like to have too many veggies in my diet just because I generally feel really uncomfortable when I have too much. But when I do have veggies, I tend to kind of lean a bit more towards things like peppers, mushrooms, and things that kind of don't give me too much discomfort. So step number 4 is fasting and have a two-mad approach to our nutrition. So we kind of take into consideration the 3 points that we've already discussed so far, and we now want to create a system that even if we kind of fall off track, we can kind of lean back onto that system to make sure we're still progressing towards our goals. So let's start off with fasting. Generally, I tend to recommend start with at least 16 hours. So a traditional 16-8 fasting window is a good place to start, especially if you're not really comfortable or if you're new to fasting. I personally like to push it towards 18 to 20 hours based on how I'm feeling or on how busy I am that day. Obviously, if I'm pretty busy, I can definitely push it later, but it does mean my eating window is going to be a lot shorter. Now, by having this reduced eating window, it's definitely going to help us feel a lot fuller for longer. And when you're in a dieting phase, this is ideal because you get over the fact that you're hungry earlier in the day and you know you're going to eat and you know you've got, say, 4 to 6 hours to really chow down on some food. So by giving yourself this restriction of time, it just helps us with that overall caloric restriction to help us get in the best shape of our lives. Now, with this fasting window, I tend to recommend following a two-mad approach to your eating. So I actually done a video on this a good little while ago. I'm going to click it at the top of the screen so you can go through and I kind of break down exactly the two-mad diet itself. However, we want 2 main meals a day, which are very high protein, high fat base. And then we're going to have a high protein snack in the middle of that to kind of tie us over. So I've personally found myself and with many of my clients, this works really well because they can eat a solid breakfast, they can eat a dinner with their family, and it comes to just having a quick snack on the go if they're in the office, or if they've got time like myself at home, you can create a yogurt bowl with Greek yogurt, some berries, and a load of other good stuff as well. Now, in my fasting window before that first meal of the day, I'll be having things like black coffee and water with electrolytes in just to kind of keep me feeling energized and keep me feeling switched on. I don't have black coffee beyond, say, midday. That's generally my rule of thumb. Sometimes it creeps a little bit over, but my general rule of thumb is making sure by midday is my cutoff because I go to bed by about 8 o'clock, between 8 and 9 o'clock every night. So I want to make sure that caffeine is out of my system to not affect my sleep. Now, also because I've got kids, it means my dinner time is generally that little bit earlier in the evening, which is perfect because I have an earlier bedtime as well, which means I'm going to have my last meal about 2 to 3 hours before bed, because then when I get to bed, my body can do all of its natural functions that it wants to do, like things like producing growth hormone, help me get good quality sleep, things like deep sleep and REM sleep, because I'm not digesting food. Now, step 5 is hydration. I've already kind of touched on bits in step 4, but when it comes to hydration, I have black coffee and water with electrolytes in my fasting window. And then when I break my fast, that's normally where I get a flat white coffee in there and then no more caffeine after that. And I'll be sipping on water with electrolytes all throughout the day. Now, when it comes to electrolytes, I don't generally buy the pre-made stuff anymore. I used to, very convenient. But when I do, I tend to buy the hunter and gatherer electrolytes. I'll put a link down below so you can kind of see what ones I'm talking about. Those ones are really good quality. There's no sugar or anything in there. So very clean and very tasty. Now, when it comes to my own blend, I actually got it off Carl Newell, like the Panda Man who's all about fasting on YouTube. And he says about doing half a teaspoon of baking soda, not baking powder, you're not a cake. We want to have about 1/4 teaspoon of Celtic sea salt and 1/4 teaspoon of low salt for the potassium. So we're going to get that potassium, we're going to get that sodium, and we're also getting a little bit more sodium from the baking soda. Now, that's what I drink on throughout the day. However, there's one change in my very first one of the day that I have, and I have 5 to 10 grams of creatine in there because it just means this is my routine of making sure I never miss my creatine intake. And in my mind, I'm shuttling that creatine right into the muscle cells with the sodium and the potassium. Now, beyond just hydrating myself with these electrolyte drinks, I like to include fruits that are going to provide me also with electrolytes. So you're going to get potassium from things like bananas, oranges, mangoes, berries. You're also going to get some magnesium from watermelon and kiwis. So that's why I like to make sure I include fruits within my diet, especially colorful fruits, because I feel the best including them. So step number 6 is where we kind of think about everything we've discussed so far, like in making sure we're including plenty of nutrient dense food, so hitting all different types of proteins. You want to make sure you're getting plenty of fruits in your diet, because what this is then going to do is make sure we're covering our bases across the board. We want to get essentially our natural multivitamin throughout our nutrition rather than having to supplement with these vitamins. Now, I've definitely been accustomed to kind of just getting the highest strength vitamins throughout the years and kind of just taking a bunch of stuff and seeing what works and not really understanding what do I actually need. And it's only when you take a blood panel and kind of look at where you're deficient that you can think, right, I need to improve the nutrients to make sure I've got that full spectrum of nutrients coming into my body to give myself the best possible chance of feeling the best. Now, I'm currently personally supplementing with quite a few different supplements because I've looked at my blood panel and I said, right, what things am I deficient in? And I'm making sure I'm covering those bases at the moment with supplements. But what I'm doing is over the months, I'm starting to kind of come away from certain supplements and get those nutrients from foods instead. So how am I doing that? For instance, I'm going to the butcher's and I'm getting mince. And in that mince, I'm asking them to fortify it with some heart and some liver, because I have mince every day, which just means I'm going to get a daily dose of these vitamins and minerals. For instance, when it comes to heart, you're going to get yourself some iron, you're going to get yourself plenty of B vitamins, you're going to get CoQ10, you're going to get some zinc, you're going to get some selenium. And in liver, you're going to get things like vitamin A, you're going to get copper, obviously iron and zinc, and a bunch of other nutrients there that are going to support your body's needs and functions. Now, if you've been consistent with your nutrition and you're finding gaps in your blood work or how you're feeling, this is then where you might want to add supplementation in to make sure you're covering those bases. At the moment, for instance, I know I'm not getting enough foods with enough magnesium in, so I do supplement with magnesium to kind of help me with sleep and also help with muscle cramping. Because I'm doing a lot of powerlifting, but I'm also training for a triathlon at the same time. But as I said, if we can kind of get those vitamins and minerals from our nutrient-dense foods first, not only is it going to be cheaper, but it's also just more convenient. So in summary, those 6 points, we want to make sure we've got something sustainable that we can follow. We want to understand how we build our plates to support our specific goals. We want to make sure we're choosing nutrient-dense foods that again support those goals. Number 4, we want to utilize some fasting and some structured approach to our eating via using something like 2MAD. Number 5, we want to stay hydrated, so not only do we function well, but it will also keep us feeling fuller and more alert throughout our fasting window. And then step 6 is making sure with supplementation, we're focusing on nutrient-dense foods first, and then we're adding supplements in if we feel we need them based on our blood work or based on how we're feeling. Now, let's just talk about my exact diet that I'm following. So I've kind of mentioned it already throughout this video, but I do follow personally an 18 to 20 hour fast most days of the week. So Monday to Friday, I'll be fasting for 18 to 20 hours. And on the weekends, I don't fast. On the weekends, I still follow my 2MAD approach to my nutrition because I like to have breakfast with the family in the morning. And then I make sure I just have a light snack, which is normally high protein. Then dinner is normally something as well, which is very high protein. And we have that a bit earlier on in the day. So I still follow the 2MAD approach. I just remove the fasting on the weekends just for the family. Now, when it comes to the actual foods themselves, pretty much every day I'm starting my day with mince, normally fortified with liver and heart where possible. And then we're having some eggs and some fermented vegetables, so things like kimchi and sauerkraut. And I normally throw an avocado in at that point as well if we have them in the house. Now, generally my snack in the middle of the day is about 250 grams of Greek yogurt with a load of berries and some other fruits on top. Might add in some honey or I might add in some maple syrup, depends on how I'm feeling that day. And then my last meal of the day, as I'm in a fat loss phase, is very much the same as meal 1. Very high protein, very high fat, and then I normally add in some veggies at this meal because I then like to bulk out that dinner so it's more like a traditional dinner. And this is where, as I mentioned earlier, I like to include butternut squash within my dinner because it feels like I'm still eating potatoes even though it's a fruit. So it's kind of that playing mind games and kind of still keeping me on track with what I'm trying to achieve. Now in that day, as I mentioned, I'll be drinking plenty of electrolytes throughout the day, so plenty of water, and I'll be having about 2 to 3 black coffees normally and then 1 flat white. But I make sure my last coffee is by about midday. So I hope this video helps you build the perfect meal plan to get you bigger, stronger, and in the best shape of your life. Following these 6 easy steps. Let me know if you've got any questions. Drop them in the comments down below. I'll be sure to get back to you there. and I'll see you in the next video.